Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to ATG webinar, Dynamic Domination with Instance-Based Doors. My name is Matt Lynn. I will be your virtual host for today. This will be a brief presentation and we'll follow it up with a short Q&A session. When you close out of the Zoom meetings, you will be directed to a quick 3-question poll. We would really appreciate responses to these. Again, it's only 3 questions, so it won't take much of your time. This webinar is live, so please feel free to drop questions into the chat window. I will review and address each of these at the conclusion of the presentation. We are also recording this webinar as we do with all of our webinars. So if you find this to be useful and want to revisit the presentation, please feel free to watch it again on YouTube or follow the links on LinkedIn. The easiest way to find these recordings is to just Google ATG USA YouTube, and it should populate as your first option. Not only will you find this webinar at this location, but all previous ATG webinars as well. As the name implies, today's webinar will focus on the creation of instance-based parameters for doors. This is especially useful when documenting an existing building, especially older ones that may have many different size doors. This prevents us from having way too many door types just to accurately document existing conditions. In addition, we will utilize CTC tool Shared Parameter Manager to quickly create and load new shared parameters into the family. Today's course learning objectives include learning to create an instance-based door family, understand the fundamentals of shared parameters and the CTC tool Shared Parameter Manager, discover how to build a door tag, and utilize shared parameters to control the door dimensions. Okay, so first, let's take a look at how the door parameters are built in their out-of-the-box state. Okay, so I'm going to lay down just a generic wall here and go ahead and grab a door. Populate it right here. Okay, so this is the family single flush door and the type is 36 by 84. You can see this is the type properties. The height and width are both indicated here, and those are type parameters. If I come to the project browser here, again, single flush is the door family and 36 by 84 is the door type. So I'm going to copy this over. So what would I do if I wanted a different size? Okay, we've all done this. You have to duplicate a type. Okay, you give it a new name. So we'll say 30 by 84. Okay, and then we can come and change the width to 30 inches or 2'6". Okay, and as we know, that does in fact change the size of the door, which you can see graphically. Okay, so if I come into the RFA family itself, if I go to the ground floor, I can see there is this dimension, and the dimension has a label applied to it, which is the width. Okay, so that's how that information is transcribed into the Revit project environment. Same thing if I look at the elevation, we have this height equals 7 feet. Height is the label or the built-in parameter. That is indicated right here and right here. So if I hit the pencil, you can see right here, parameter type, built-in parameter. Okay, so Autodesk does go ahead and create a set of parameters for you that are built in. As you can see through the dialog, it is completely grayed out. We can't change it. It is what it is, and it'll always be that way. Okay, built-in parameter. Okay, so it's the same thing if I hit width, the pencil goes into edit mode. Again, this is another built-in parameter. Everything's grayed out. Okay, I don't need to load it back in because I didn't edit anything. I'm simply going to close this and go back to the Revit project. Okay, so is there anything wrong with this out of the box method? No, not necessarily. In fact, it works quite well for new construction. However, about a year ago, we drew an existing building in New Orleans that happened to be 1 million square feet. And that's not an exaggeration. 1 million square feet, and it was built in 1735. So as you can imagine, there were a ton of different door sizes. And I think we ended up with over 100 different door types, which is ridiculous for existing conditions. So at the conclusion of this project, it dawned on me, why didn't we just create a door with instance-based parameters and simply call the door type existing? So that was the lesson learned, which has led to this topic today. Okay, so I am going to, as opposed to making a new type, I'm going to save it as a new family, and I'll just call it existing door. Now I can go and open that new door family, which I guess is the existing door family. All right, so if we come back here, we've already seen that. There's our height and width, which are the built-in parameters. Open my front elevation. Open up a 3D view. And then the ground floor level here. Okay, so back to the parameters. What we need to do is we need to create a new parameter. That way we control the options within the parameter itself. So we'll call this one height instance. Okay, right here. This is the big thing. We couldn't change this in the built-in parameter. So here we have the option to make it whatever we want. So I'm going to make this an instance type parameter, and the type of parameter is length. That was set. That's good. Okay, so that's right there. Same thing. I'm going to come back and I'm going to make another parameter. We'll call this width instance. Modify it to instance. Discipline, that's good. Type, that's good. That's where it'll be grouped, which is right here under the dimensions group. Okay, one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come down here. This button right here, this allows you to alphabetize them. It has no effect on anything, but just puts them in order, which is nice. So now the instance-based parameters are directly under the built-in ones. And I'll go ahead and change the values right here, 7 feet and 3 feet. Say okay. So now I can quickly come back here and grab these labels. All you have to do is swap it out. Okay, so now that is driven by the width instance parameter. Same thing here, I'll grab this dimension, swap it out for another label. And now this is driven by the height instance parameter. Okay, whenever you make a new parameter in a project, it is good practice to go ahead and, well, first, before we do that, I still have 2 types in here that indicate the size. So I'm going to delete that type, and I'm going to rename this one simply instance, because I know I'm only going to have one type. I'm not going to have multiple. We'll just call it instance. So whenever you create a new parameter, it is good practice, especially dimension type parameters, to go ahead and flex them to make sure they're operating properly. So if I come here and make that 10, you can see over on the right, that door got taller. Same thing here. If I switch it to wider, it should affect the geometry, which it did. If I take a look in the elevation, yes, that's definitely taller. And same thing with the plan. It's a huge door now. Okay, so that confirms the parameters are operating as expected. I'm going to put that back to 7 feet. Same thing with the width. I'm going to put it back to 3 feet. Now, if you look here, I cannot delete that. This I can. Okay, same thing. If you click on a built-in parameter, which is what this initial width and height is, you cannot delete the parameter. It's built in. Okay, whereas these you can. Ideally, I'd like to delete them from the family, but That's just not an option. So I'm going to save this family and I'm going to load it back in. Okay, so now we have a new door family, which we can see over here in the project browser. The family is existing door and the type is instance. We will only need one type. That's the whole purpose of this process. Okay, so now I can control the size right over here in properties. 8 feet, 4 feet, and you can see that got bigger. Back to 7, back to 3. Okay, it is good to go ahead and flex the geometry both in the family environment and the Revit project environment just to verify everything is working. Okay, so now that we have some doors in the model, let's go ahead and tag and schedule them to see how they interact with our new instance-based parameters. All right, I'm going to copy this door over a couple times. Okay, again, these are the instance one. They are driven by the values over here as opposed to the type values. So if I make this slightly bigger, that changes. Same thing here. I can change it to 9 feet and 5 feet. It's bigger, yet it's all still only one door type called instance. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and tag these. Tag by category, which is the door tag, obviously. Okay, I'm going to rename these. I'll call this one door 101, which you can do over here in the properties under the mark parameter. Alternatively, you can select the tag itself and update it there either way. Okay, here we have X01. I'm going to name all of my instance-based doors with the prefix of X indicating existing. Okay, so all these, again, one type, whereas the other two require their own type for different sizes. Okay, now I'm going to come through and go ahead and create a door schedule. Door schedule, leave that. Pick the fields. Okay, I'm going to grab mark, which is the door number. I'm going to grab width and height, like so. Okay, so just like that, we have our door schedule. So here's all the doors. Okay, now over here, you can see these existing doors are not accurately reflecting the size, right? Door 101 and 201 look good. And here's why. It's referencing these height and width parameters. Now, ideally, I'd like to come over here to the fields and grab the height instance and width instance parameters and add those as well. Unfortunately, they don't exist in the project environment. They were family parameters that did not carry over. Okay, so the schedule is only looking at those type values, which is great for the new doors, but the existing doors, the values are not accurate. Okay, I am seeing some questions pop in. Again, I will go ahead and answer those towards the conclusion of this presentation, but please feel free to continue to add them, and I will address them towards the end. Okay, so we have some work to do on the schedule, seeing as our new instance-based parameters were not available fields in the door schedule. But before we do that, let's create a new door tag that indicates the door size in lieu of the door number. This will also give us the ability to simply click the tag to update the size in the door rather than editing the type or instance properties directly. Okay, so here's our door tag, which is a family itself. This is the RFA within the family environment. Okay, so that's the mark or door number. That's all fine. That's both good in the new and existing doors. All right, I'm going to create two types within here. One will be called door number and one will be called door size. Okay, so those are the types. Within the types, I'm going to create a couple custom parameters, also called door number, yes, no, which will be the graphic override I applied to the elements. Okay, so type, that is a yes, no, and it is a type parameter. Okay, I'm going to build another one called door size, yes, no, which will be a yes, no type parameter. I always put that YN on my yes, no parameter so I can easily identify them. Okay, so for the door number type, I want to show the door number, but I do not want to show the door size. Conversely, for the door size, I want to hide the door number, but show the door size. Okay, so just toggling back and forth, I can see those look good. And for here, I am going to copy the label up here and use it to revise to the door size. So here in the edit label is where you define what is that label reading, right? So in this case, I want to add width and I want to add height. Okay, the mark I can get rid of, that's the door number. So there's our new parameter. 1 foot by 1 foot, stretch that out. Okay, ideally, it'd be nice if the door tag read in inches. So I'm going to change the sample value to 36 and the height by 84. Now, doing that does not change the actual units of the parameter itself. It simply changes how it looks here in the RFA only. Okay. All right, 3684. I'm going to put a little X in the suffix between the height and width like so. Now I can stretch that out. Okay, so now if I come back in, I'm going to move that back down to where it's supposed to be. And then I can use my yes, no parameters to toggle what is seen in the project environment. Okay, but first I'm going to spread these out so the full text fits within the tag itself. Move that out a 1/16 of an inch as well. All right, so I'll grab the door number and it's currently, okay, so the door size is width, and right here, you can change the format of the units, which is what we want to do, right? We want this to read as inches as opposed to the Revit's default, which is feet and inches, as we know. Come in here, so uncheck project settings and go to inches only. If you want to add inches, a little symbol, you could. I'm going to leave that out just to keep the tag smaller. Okay, so now I'm going to grab the door size, and where it says visible here, over here you can associate a parameter, which is what we're going to do with those yes, no parameters we created to toggle the visibility of these on or off. Okay, I want that to toggle with the door size. Same thing with this, as opposed to being always visible, I want it to toggle with the door number. Go ahead and save this as door tag, that's fine. And load into project. Okay, so you can see now it's reading the door sizes as opposed to the door number. Now they're both still in here, so you can toggle back and forth to whichever one you want. Okay, so now you probably noticed right off the bat, it worked for the two doors on the left, which is the 36 and the 30. And that's because the label is in fact reading the built-in parameter, which is the type-based one. So there's another little hiccup here for our instance-based doors, is it's reading the wrong parameter. Here's the door tag. Again, now we have three types. The door tag, this is the original one. And then it's got the new two types I created, which is the door number and door size. And you can toggle between any of them like so. Okay, these are the ones that are obviously incorrect. Okay, come back to the door schedule. Again, those are still incorrect as we previously saw. Save this. All right, hold for a second. I need a drink of water. Okay, so now that we've seen some roadblocks with our instance-based parameters regarding tagging and scheduling, let's take a look at our options to rectify. Specifically, let's explore the option of using shared parameters versus the family parameters. Okay, so coming back to the, this is the instance-based family we made. You can see the height here is driven by the height instance parameter. The door is driven by the width instance parameter. Okay, so if I come here, you see right here, it says family parameter cannot appear in schedule or tags. Okay, those are the exact two roadblocks we just ran into. If we went with shared parameter, you can share by multiple projects and families, export it to ODBC, and it can appear in schedules and tags. So right here, this is the route you want to go if you ever want to tag and or schedule these instance-based doors. Otherwise, you'll run into the roadblock that we just saw, okay? So I'm just going to delete these, which is the ones I made in the previous iteration. By the way, you can see how it says with instance still, even though we just deleted that parameter. It'll stay on there until you select it. It's just like a regeneration issue or something, I guess. So if I select it and click off, you can see it goes away. Same thing with height instance. Right here, if I click it and then click off, it'll go back to getting rid of that parameter that no longer exists. Okay, so now what we want to do is create a new parameter that is shared. Okay, and you can go through that process. But this time I'm going to use a CTC tool called CTC Shared Parameter Manager. And that's because you can quickly create shared parameters and you can load them much faster. You can do it in batch. You can create them in batch and you can also load them in batch, which is nice. Okay, Shared Parameter Manager. Now you can see over here on the left side, this is very similar to what you see out of the box shared parameter dialog. And it is, the left side is exactly the same. You can browse, you can open a shared parameter. In this case, we'll just create a new one. So give it any name you want. Find the location where you want to save it. We'll call it SP file for a shared parameter file. Okay, now you cannot create a parameter until you create a group. First, it has to have a group so it knows where to file right in here. See how these are grayed out? So you can add groups. Now here in the CTC tool, you can add default groups. And that's what we recommend because ultimately you're gonna have to file these parameters under some group somewhere. And there's no reason to reinvent the wheel because Autodesk already has these groups in place and your project is already using them. So by hitting this add default groups, it automatically adds all the standard Autodesk groups for you. I'm going to save this and we want some new shared parameters that will be part of the dimensions group right in here. So now you can see that is no longer grayed out. I can now add parameters. And here's another thing, I can batch add, something you cannot do in native Revit. All right, so what we need the width instance and we also need the height instance. Okay, group dimensions, that looks good. And the type is length. Yes, that is what we want. Say create. So those are now created within the new shared parameter file. Save that. And over here, you can load the new shared parameters into your project and or family environment. Now in this case, you have to have a selection set. First, you got to map it. So if I come here and map the new shared parameter file, it loads over here. Here's the new parameters. And first you have to make a selection set. So we'll make a new one and simply call it instance parameters. Okay, so now I can add those new parameters to this selection set. And see how they're green right here? And this is green down here. That indicates these are instance parameters. If they were blue, they would be type. So if I select them both and hit that, you can see they turn blue and now they're type. But that's not what we want. We want instance. So I'm going to click that back to instance. They are green. That all looks good. I'm going to select them again. And over here, discipline, type. Okay, so for group, where do we want these to save? In the family themselves. So you can, organize groups within the shared parameter file, and then you also tell it where you want to organize in both the family and project environment. So we'll do the same thing, dimensions, and then load those parameters. Yes, we want to load it. It gives you a little success report. Okay. It is here and here. By the way, whenever you see default written next to a parameter, that is an indication that is an instance parameter. So for the ones that do not say parentheses default, those are all type. The ones that say default are instance. All right, so I'm going to change this to 7 feet. I'm going to change this to 3 feet. Okay, shared parameter noted here. Okay, so now I can simply come back to the dimensions. I'm not placing new dimensions. I'm simply selecting existing ones and reassigning the parameter values, or not the value, the parameter to the dimension. Save that, yes. Load and close. Override existing. Okay, so when I did that, you can see all of the doors, they reverted back to the actual size of 36 by 84. Okay, so it appears we're back to where we started, right? The only difference is we swapped out the family parameters for shared parameters. So how did that help us? What did we achieve by swapping out those parameters? Okay, so let's look at our door schedule now. Again, they're still reading incorrectly. However, if I jump to fields, right here, I now have with instance. So you have the option to schedule these things now, and that's just because they are shared parameters. Otherwise, as you previously saw, it wouldn't transition. Okay, so now we're scheduling both the type built-in parameters and the instance-based custom shared parameters. Now, I don't like the way this looks. I don't like having all 4 columns in one schedule. So I'm going to make a new schedule, and we'll call it existing door schedule. Okay, for this one, I'm going to add the mark again. And this time I'm only going to add the instance parameters because that's what's tied to the existing doors. Like so. Okay, it still schedules all of them. Now the type-based doors don't have those values. That's why they're blank. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to filter this schedule to just the existing doors. I can do that several ways. I'm going to go with the mark begins with X for existing. Okay, so you can see that now leans that schedule up to just the existing doors. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get rid of that. It's still referencing that parameter, but just in the schedule itself, I just wanted to say height and width. Just to show you over here in formatting, you can see the fields over here, and the heading is allowed to be something different than the name of the field itself. Okay, so now I can pop back to the door schedule, which I'm going to rename as new door schedule. Okay, so now I can do the same thing with filter. I want to filter these down to the new ones, so I will do by mark again, except this time I will say does not begin with X, which gets rid of the existing doors. Okay. Now here, I don't want these anymore, so I'm simply going to delete these fields from the schedule. Okay, so now the look of the new door schedule and the look of the existing door schedule, if I were to plop them both on a sheet, would appear to be similar. Even though they're doing two different things, grabbing different parameters, they're effectively achieving the same thing on your sheet. Okay, so now we've straightened out our door schedule with the new shared parameters. Let's do the same with our door tag. Okay, again, so this tag is looking to these values here, which are the built-in type base. Okay, whereas these doors are looking to these instance properties. And I'm just going to switch these to existing phase. That makes more sense, seeing as they're representing existing doors. So another thing that's nice about this tag, you can go ahead and click in it and give it any value you want, as opposed to editing type. You can do it right here via the tag. So I could say 42. Yes, it does that because it's a type parameter. And you can see it changes the size of the door for you as well. Okay, now the name doesn't make sense, so I'm going to switch it back to the 30 because that's what it's called. Now, if I were to come here and swap this out, 42. Okay, so you see what that did. It changed all the tags because they're all referencing that parameter, which now has a value of 42. But it didn't change the size of the door. Okay, so that's what we need to rectify. If I were to come here, that's 3 feet still, even though it says 42. So I'm going to put that back to 36, which will update all of them. Okay, I'm going to come up and I'm going to purge this door tag type because we're not using it anymore. So come here, door tag, right here. I'm going to get rid of that. So now we'll just be left with door number and door size, which are the only two we care about. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to make a, I'm going to save this family as existing door tag. Now I can go and open. All right, I'll grab this parameter, and just for clarity, I'm going to pull it off temporarily. Okay, that's reading mark. That's fine for both the existing and the new. It's the same parameter. We're going to leave that as is. Okay, so for this one, width and height, we need to swap these out for the instance ones, right? Okay, well, I'm not seeing it in here. Okay, so what do we need to do? We need to load them in. When you load parameters into a tag, you can see the only option you have is a shared parameter. And that's because if you look at the description, it can be shared by multiple projects and families, exported to ODBC, and appear in schedules and tags. So the entire purpose of the tag is to reference a parameter which has to be shared. That's why it's your only option. Okay, so select, okay, I'm gonna browse to the new shared parameter file we created a couple steps ago. Right here, shared parameter file. Go to the group, which will be dimensions, and then add the new parameters, which would be instance-based height and, let's see, do that again. Select, go to dimensions, height instance, okay, which is added it here. Same thing, I'm gonna go grab the dimensions category with instance parameter, again, shared, that's my only option. And I'm gonna bring those over into the label portion. Okay, so now I need to format them just like the other ones, starting with the units. So uncheck project units and go to inches only. I don't want the feet. Same thing here, edit units to inches. Again, you could put an inches symbol, but that would make the tag bigger. I'll put the X after the suffix to separate the height and width. And just for here, I'll do, again, 36 and 84. And then I get rid of that one and get rid of that one, which should look exactly the same, which it did. Okay, so now I can move that back into place, which will toggle on and off via the type, just to verify that is visible when the door size is toggled to yes. Okay. So now I can save this and load it back in. There's the original door tag. And down here is the new one for existing doors. So that will remain door tag door size. And this will be existing door tag. First, we'll look at door number that operates as expected and door size. So if I were to test this, okay, so that worked. You can see both the tag changed as well as the door size. I could also select the door tag itself and give it a new value, 42. And you can see it changes the size of the door and the tag all within one door type. I'm not creating new types or duplicating anything. All right, I'm going to put these all back to 3 feet. Both the doors and the tags update accordingly. So it appears everything is in working order now. We have doors with instance-based parameters attached to them, which is great for existing conditions as noted. We have both tagging and scheduling methods that jive with our new shared parameters. All is good. So I'm going to use these last few minutes to quickly highlight a highly underused parameter, which is the global parameter. Okay, so if I come here, I'm going to grab these and I'm going to copy over to make several more doors. Okay, I'm going to come through and give them door tags, just like the other. I'll use the quick tag all. And what I want is existing door tag, door size. Okay. We came in horizontal, so I'm going to select all and make them vertical. give them the existing phase. Not necessary, but good practice. So if I come in and change the value of this one to 37 by 85, just an inch bigger, both height and width, you can see the tag updated as well as the size. Make that one a couple inches bigger. So I'm just going to go through these and just add an inch to each one quickly. So this will be a 39 by 87. This will be a 40 by 88. Now I can do these just like I'm doing right now via the tag itself, which will update both the tag and the door, or I could select the door and insert the values in the properties, which would again update both the door and the tag. All right, 4391. And 4492. Okay, so they all are slightly different. They vary by 1 inch. Okay, that one is 7 feet, that one is 7'5". Okay, right over here, there is a button next to the parameter that says associate global parameter. Okay, so what's the point of this? If I come here, associate global parameters, currently I have none of them in this project. Obviously, this is a very bare project. There's not much in it. So I'm going to create a new global parameter, and we'll call it height instance global. Okay. Okay, it's now grayed out and it says equals. So it's looking to a global parameter for the value. Okay, let's do the same thing with width instance over here. You can associate a global. So I can grab the door. It is currently 3 feet. If I hit the button here, say new global parameter, and we'll call it width instance global. Okay, so this one, if I select it, you can see it's still referencing the revised values that I gave it. Now, if I select all of them, you get this little question mark. The question mark tells you that they have varying values. So I'm going to say I want them all to have this height instance global. Same thing with the width. I want them all to have this width instance global. And when I do that, you can see it change the size of all of them. Okay. So at any time, I can come up to manage global parameters. And I can say, all right, I want all of them to be, or all of them that have this parameter associated, I should say, to be 8 feet 4 inches, which could be all of them or some of them or any % of them. They'll automatically update. Okay, so at any point I can come back and say, all right, now go back to none. Maybe I wanted to reset them all to 7x3 and then come back and only change a few. Now I can go back to the instance-based parameters that they started with. Okay, so perhaps that didn't seem too useful, and maybe it wasn't given the circumstance. However, there are times when global parameters are in fact extremely helpful. So one example is defining the distance of the hinge side of the door to an adjacent orthogonal wall, and then standardizing this distance for all doors in the models. You could say, I want it to be 4 inches or 5 or whatever it is, whatever your company standard is, you can set that as a global parameter and then go ahead and apply it to all the doors. Okay, so another great use for global parameters is tying an angle dimension to a north arrow in your Revit project template. So then, as you approach a project, all you have to do is update that angle dimension parameter in the global parameter dialog in any given project, and it'll update all the north arrows in that project. So those are the two most common uses of global parameters that I've seen, but that's how they work. Okay, so this does conclude the webinar, Dynamic Domination of Instance-Based Doors. So I'm going to jump to the questions. I haven't played with it too far, but can't you select the built-in place in the editor mode and select instance parameter, toggle it underneath in the ribbon? That's, let's see. Christopher, could you unmute yourself? I've never explored this route. Let's see, can you unmute yourself? Allow to talk. Okay, Christopher, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for your question. Great question. I've never even heard of being able to edit an in place, or excuse me, a built-in parameter. So
yeah, if you edit your door type in the family editor, if you
in the family editor.
Yeah, sorry, family editor. You can select the width and height parameters. Sorry, in the model.
In the Revit project.
So plan view. Nope. Sorry. Let me let me try to be clear. Yeah, there you go. Floor plan, and then if you select the width itself, there's a checkbox underneath it in the ribbon. If you check that, then it allows it to be an instance. You can do the same thing with height and load it back into your project, and then it just uses that instead.
So let me just verify these are the built-in instance. Oh my gosh, you're right. That's amazing. Christopher, thank you for that. That was awesome.
Yeah, and then I think I don't mean to say it this way, it makes much of your following points moot, because a lot of it can just use the same tags and that type of thing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Absolutely right. Okay. Thank you, Christopher.
Sure.
All right, Kathleen. So could we do the same thing with the fire rating? Oh, yeah. If your question is, can you go ahead and make an instance-based fire rating parameter? Yes, you basically follow that same path. Okay. Christopher just checked. Okay, so it looks like you followed up with what we just talked about. Has anyone tried? Okay, same question again. Or you can, okay. All right. Chris, thank you for that excellent insight. Very good stuff. We have a small crowd here. Chris, Jason, Marshall, and Richard. Do we have any other questions?
Since we have a small group, I'll throw this out. Has anybody else found a really good use for global parameters? Because I racked my brain trying to use them, and I've only had a couple of instances where I've actually tried.
Yeah, like I said, for me, it's the two I've seen most common is, the distance of this hinge to an orthogonal wall, and then the north arrow angle are the two I've seen most often.
Yeah, we use it for our north arrow,
Mm-hmm.
which is still annoying that we had to have the workaround, but we'll put that by the side.
Good insight. Anyone else? Man, I got to tell you, I learned something today for sure. Okay, well, with that, thank you everyone for your time. I hope this was helpful. Hope you learned something. I definitely did. Okay, Jason just popped in a comment. Also, door frame location within the thickness of a door. Yes, good call. That's in regard to the global parameter, I assume. Frame placement within CMU wall. Thickness of the wall. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Agree. Great places to use global parameters. Okay, any more questions and or comments? Okay, well, I appreciate the feedback. Hope you all enjoyed this, and we'll go ahead and close out. Thanks.